and it's bringing belts of rain, will do for the next week. The winds will always be fairly mild, but nevertheless we'll get those periods of rain, separated by good clear or even bright sunny spells. The winds today, not all that strong, but picking up a bit with the arrival of the rain. Temperatures, seasonal normal just above. The summary then for today.
It's 7 o'clock on Tuesday, the 22nd of March, and this is the BBC's Breakfast Time programme. A very good morning to you. The news headlines.
In the newsroom, the start of another day. Foreign Duty Editor Barry Meadows is first to arrive. In the years he has worked here, television news has undergone a triple revolution. The three revolutions have overturned the way news is gathered, edited and screened. In the beginning, there was film, the medium familiar from cinema newsreels. But for TV news, it was slow and cumbersome. First, there was the problem of getting it back to base. Foreign stories often appeared days after the event. The film cameraman just had to dispatch his story as fast as possible. Then, whether it was a foreign or a home story, the film had to go through the soup, the messy business of processing. For 40 minutes or so, the story was untouchable, and this delay had to be built into any scheduling. Today, such leisurely progress would be unthinkable. In the news revolution, electronics have superseded chemicals. How does the new technology bring the news to the screen? How have electronics affected the editors? To find out, Horizon spent one day with BBC Television News. Revolution number 1, news gathering. Tuesday, the 22nd of March, starts like any other news day. Industrial news leads the list of today's home stories. The ferries dispute with a mass meeting at Dover, and later discussions at ACAS, the conciliation service. Also today, an anti-litter group is getting Mrs. Thatcher to launch their campaign. First pressure will be on the editor of the Lunchtime News, Mike Broadbent, a journalist of over 30 years' experience.
Just been talking to John Fryer about the P&O story. He should have some good stuff from Dover this morning.
He's been in since 7:30. He now has about 3 hours left to compile a half-hour news programme. What are the prospects?
A busy day in Washington, quite a full programme of events with the Schultz and Shevardnadze meeting getting underway. Timetable is a 1:30 start our time, break for lunch at 5. The American networks got some useful pictures in the Gulf this morning of the attack on the Norwegian tanker by Iranian gunboats. They've also got coverage of the British warship, the Exeter, going to the aid of the tanker. That'll start coming in at 10 o'clock on the satellite from Dubai.
Right, 2 additions on the home front to the diary. The ferries dispute, NUS at Dover are meeting to discuss the Dover strike this morning, and John Fryer is there with editing and feeding from Dover.
Right, well, what's the lead? It's either Ford or Washington. Which has been all over the Breakfast Time and the radio this morning, but wasn't in the papers, or Washington. I think probably Ford.
Yeah, I'm in the trouble with Washington.
The problem with the 1 o'clock news is getting the material back early enough. Today, the industrial stories look promising.
Morning, Barbara. Can you handle the P&O NUS story this morning? John Fry's gone down to Dover for this mass meeting of the seamen down there, and he will be doing a self-contained package. He's got everything down there, and it'll be fed from Tolsford Hill, I should think, you know, the usual, around about 1:45, 10 to 1.
We'll be using the British Telecom transmitter near Dover because it's the quickest way to get John Fry's report of the seamen's meeting. The tape will be fed from our link band to the mast and then direct from there to London.
Well, that's what we think of your new terms and conditions, Mr. Ford. I must say one thing, however. The person who wrote it, he must have been a pal of ours, because it doesn't need any encouragement from me, to make this strike go a little bit more solid.
Too late, Albert, you missed it. Nice to see you again. We're meeting such salubrious places these days. We've got enough of this, Tony.
Could you glance up, Prime Minister?
Yes,
It'll go on that long, yeah?
Yeah, it usually ends up, you know, about the late hours and the evening. I just can't do that for now.
No,
I need a couple of days off, you know.
You can always
The National Union of Seamen, and myself in particular, we're not Luddites, and we recognise that there's got to be change. It's the short period in which the company wishes to introduce the change that's causing the problem.
This press release.
Okay.
Do you want to speak to them and tell them what they want to do?
Yeah, I'll have to use this radio over there to get through to the office.
Right.
We've got several plug-in points around central London originally set up for the coronation. Instead of the journey back to White City, the dispatch rider just has to take the tape a few hundred yards to Downing Street. Useful, especially as it's needed for the 11 o'clock summary.
I'll just have a look at the cassette for you, hold on. As far as I know, there isn't, no. It's about 10 minutes worth of material, so I don't know how much we'll get onto the 11. Well, I don't know if it's even that, actually, to be honest, but we'll find out.
Yes, that's the trouble.
From the newsroom, the main story is at 11 o'clock. A Royal Navy destroyer has helped to rescue 4 seamen from a blazing Norwegian tanker in the southern Gulf. The Soviet Foreign Minister Edward Shevardnadze says he now believes a date for another superpower summit will be set during his visit to Washington.
Smiling Mr. Shevardnadze on day 3 of his visit here goes through the motions of negotiating and even asking the press for advice.
John Fry will put together his own material in a mobile editing van on the spot, so it'll come to us pre-packaged and ready to transmit.
Reading that, I'm quite sure none of you want to return to work.
Is that the leaflet? Or is that terms and conditions? So he's burning the terms and conditions? Yeah. Right, I've seen enough, actually. I'll ring the office now, then, shall I? Is that all right? Yes, the meeting's just finished and they've endorsed their position. None of them are, or very few of them, are signing the terms and conditions.
What have we got then? Well, it's about 10 minutes of rushes of Thatcher collecting rubbish. Various cutaways and things. What sort of length are you looking for? 20 seconds. Total lap sequence. Yeah, that's quite good. I mean, we could say Mrs. Thatcher went to St James's Park today to launch a new campaign, met the stamp.
Lorry drivers are still facing delays of up to 12 hours. as the strike disrupts the port of Dover.
Can I show you this, John?
The port of Dover. There are only 4 sailings, with no end to the dispute in sight.
From Washington, we're taking 3 satellite feeds today. For the 1 o'clock, we'll have a live interview about the summit, and later there'll be a report from Tim Sebastian.
You guys, I heard 3. I don't think they're putting up any mics, are they? Not this morning.
So if I stay here, I'm going to use my little stool.
Okay.
I'll just go behind somebody.
Hello, it's Barry there, please. It's Tim. Nothing yet, because after the first session there hasn't been any, and we won't get any until the State Department briefing, probably about 12 o'clock today. All right, so I'll give you a call when I get back to the office.
Okay, Tim, many thanks for that. All the best. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
So it's a response to all the attacks that have been on Iranian ships over the weekend. So I'll bring in some kind of line about that.
I'm making the Gulf tanker rescue the lead story. The strong British involvement and good satellite pictures, and David Shupman will voice them.
So what we've got 2 dead, 4 badly injured, is that right?
Yeah. 10 crew picked up in all.
That's right, I
6
see. Yeah.
with less severe injuries and 4 badly injured.
How's the length working out, Ian?
26 seconds plus the 12 seconds actuality so far.
This is where you can use both tanks.
Yes.
Yeah. HMS Exeter responded, sending ahead a 2-man medical team on a Lynx helicopter. Wearing gas masks, they were lowered one by one onto a rescue tug. Once on board, they began treating a group of the survivors. HMS Exeter responded, sending ahead a 2-man medical team on a Lynx helicopter.
Services desk. The test tube baby pioneer Patrick Steptoe has died.
The what?
Patrick Steptoe's died.
Oh.
It's Peter O'Connell of Wales. Patrick Steptoe's test tube baby just died.
Caroline.
Out whatever library he can. Wilkins, listen, Linda Lewis
Caroline.
is here. Steptoe has died.
I don't know which found that.
Right, okay. Yeah, I think Wilkins is on his way down. I've asked library to dig out what they've got.
Yeah.
You're around in case there's something goes wrong. Robert, can you work on it?
Caroline. Bloody old going on. Caroline. Well, I'm sorry, but it's urgent.
Right, well, let's put Steptoe in. We're not going to have it ready for a while. Let's put it at 31 and 2, just in case we can get an act together on that. What am I allowed to do? Just scripts and Steptoe pictures, and then just...
There's no obit, right?
As far as we know. Robert?
No.
There's no obit in the system, is there? Right, so we'll have an intro, we'll script some Steptoe pictures, and then we'll do, and then Wilkinson will come up as a studio spot. Okay?
Hello, VTN3, Tulsford Hill here. The tape hasn't arrived yet, but we're expecting him to come any minute now.
How long was the shot minute again?
4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
On air.
Coming to camera 1, so you mean charisma, stand by on Zoom and stand by charisma.
The 1 o'clock news from the BBC with Michael Buck.
Good afternoon. The Royal Navy has staged a daring rescue operation to save the crew of a Norwegian tanker on fire after an attack in the Gulf. But is it too late? Setting a date, the summit looks on for May.
VT3, thanks very much. I have a tape for you. Track 2.
Page 6, Gulf Payoff.
He's not hearing us.
Mr. Abelman's not hearing us, Bob.
Counting out of VT. 10, 9,
Can't
8.
yet.
I was getting a bit worried about how near we are to it. I think we'll move it down anyway. Let's move it down to 53, 54, 55. The Steptoe story is now just 53 Mike and Caps and 54 VT with James Wilkinson doing a live voice.
Mr. Edelman, how do you rate the chances now of Mr. Reagan and Mr. Gorbachev having an arms treaty to sign at their summit if it goes ahead in May?
I would rate them as just about zilch.
The ferry company P&O has lifted tomorrow's deadline for striking ferry crews at Dover to sign new contracts. Our Labour Relations correspondent John Fryer is in Dover.
Lorry drivers are still facing delays of up to 12 hours as the strike disrupts the port of Dover. There are only 4 sailings, with no end to the dispute in sight. 7 weeks into the strike, but there were few signs of crumbling at this morning's mass meeting in Dover. The company had given the workers till tomorrow to sign new contracts. Their leaders showed what they thought of that.
Well, that's what we think of the new terms and conditions.
Hopes now rest on this afternoon's talks at the Conciliation Service ACAS.
Sorry? Is that
Yes. Within the past half hour, we've heard of the death of the test tube baby pioneer, Patrick Steptoe. His family say he died from cancer. Steptoe was 74. And science correspondent James Wilkinson reports.
Can't. Cue James.
Yeah.
Patrick Steptoe, with his colleague Robert Edwards, laid the foundations for a technique which is now used worldwide to treat certain kinds of infertility. Thousands of couples have cause to thank them for the research which produced Louise Brown. In the late 60s and early 70s, when they embarked on their research, it was considered almost sacrilege to tamper with the life-forming processes. Edwards was the scientific brains behind the research. Steptoe took the brave step of performing the operations. In the last year or so, Patrick Steptoe received one of the highest accolades in the scientific world. He was made a Fellow of the Royal Society.
Mrs. Thatcher was given expert tuition when she tried her hand as a litter inspector this morning. At St James Park in London, she launched a £1 million drive to keep Britain tidy and clean up the worst ice. More on those stories in our later news programmes. You've been watching the 1 o'clock news from the BBC. Good afternoon.
3 or 4.
Look at that. 4, 3, 2, and 1, 0. Off air. Thanks very much.
Apart from the fact you were 5 seconds over, that was very good.
Another deadline met. But how did they cope with that late story?
Yeah, it was flashed on our internal tannoy systems at just after 1:45, and immediately recognised that it's a very well-known character. We've done a lot of stories about the whole test tube baby story. It's such a big story around the world now. It was started by him. Fortunately, our medical correspondent James Wilkinson was in the building and knew him very well, so we were able to get film out and get him virtually to ad-lib the piece in the programme. So within half an hour of getting the news, it was on the air in a form in which, had we not told the jury it had just happened, they wouldn't have known.
Technical revolution number 2 transformed the newsroom itself and helped with the late story. In a room just behind the studios lies the hardware that has totally changed the old way of doing things. This is the triple computer that drives ENS, the electronic newsroom system. Newsrooms used to be awash with paper.
There's a plane missing over the Atlantic.
Paper from news agencies in quadruplicate.
And for the first official duty.
paper from sub-editors, scriptwriters, reporters, news typists.
Monetary, M-O-N-E-T-A-R-Y.
36.
Yes,
Three right. Yeah.
Paper from teleprompter operators.
The public prosecutor of Palermo after forcing his car to a halt and pouring machine gun fire into it. He was returning from laying flowers on his wife's grave.
Today, one machine combines the task of teleprinter, typewriter and teleprompter. This screen and keyboard give journalists unprecedented flexibility in preparing news programs. At first sight, the keyboard looks like part of any home computer. But this terminal has specialized functions. First, the journalist can receive news directly. Whatever's on his screen at the time, the word urgent is flashed on at the top. He can then key the full story from the news agency. This is what happened at 12:46 with the death of Patrick Steptoe. Next, the terminal can be used to display the running order. Gaps are left to accommodate new or late stories. The Steptoe story was first placed at number 31 and 32. Then Mike Broadbent thought it wouldn't make it in time, and he dropped it down to 53 and 54. On the terminals, the Steptoe story was simply and quickly repositioned. The terminal is also a word processor. The journalists input their stories direct. So it replaces both typewriter and news typist. And the computer does all the calculations of timing. Every program must be precisely the right length. The introduction to the P&O Ferries story was originally allocated 15 seconds. It worked out longer than that. The script coordinator is responsible for timings. Counting 3 words to a second, the computer calculates the actual length of the Ferries story. It turns out to be 29 seconds. The computer system has also modernized the old teleprompter for newsreaders.
Hello, Pauline, could I have the running order, please? Thank you.
The running order and any script are automatically downloaded from the newsroom. All the information appears on the AutoScript machine in the studio. The AutoScript operator can then check each story and make last-minute alterations. Finally, she prepares it for running on a special monitor in front of the newsreader. If a hard copy of any story is needed, it can be printed off. The story can be collected from printers in the newsroom or near the gallery and studio. The next stage of our Newsday is in the hands of this man, Bob Wheaton, editor of the 6 o'clock news.
We're going to lead on Ulster. Noel, the man appears in court this afternoon. Charged with a number of murders, 6 I think it is, isn't it? A short, sharp piece from Neil Bennett. Barbara Ferries, yes. Peace talks in progress. Linda Lewis. If it's not exciting, I'm inclined just to take some arrival shots to say peace talks have started. This is what they said on the way in.
Well, after P&O's statement this morning that they made £57.1 million profit on North Sea ferries and European ferries, it seems very little.
So you weren't very happy about that then?
Bloody well wasn't.
The 6 o'clock news is longer, so we can develop stories more fully, more clearly. For the 6, I'm hoping to carry the ferry story forward with a meeting at ACAS. We have a links vehicle down there with our reporter Linda Lewis. Linda on set.
Thanks. Linda, hello.
What have you got so far?
We've got McCluskey going in at ACAS, and he's fairly rude about P&O's profits. I don't know whether we can put swear words on the air, but anyway, he came out with one. Yes, the link's arrived.
There'll be special radio link gear from the roof of ACAS. It's not far away, but we're not certain when the meeting will end, and this way we can take it live if we need to.
Morgan. Linda Lewis, ferries.
Yes.
Got two. The first one is the figures. P&O logo for the official pre-tax profits. And I want money on the shipping costs. Right?
Right, thanks.
902 from VT3, yes, that's fine. Is Linda Lewis with you? She is? Barbara wants a word, hang on.
Linda, I haven't had a chance to see the interview with Borders yet. If I can just tell you what I've got on the graphics. Okay, go ahead. If I can find it. We start off on the pre-tax profits of the 100 million for the whole group, and then we ante on the shipping, and we go straight to sterling. Is that your idea? More or less, yes.
The newspapers were full of a row over some of our videotape from Northern Ireland. And now the Prime Minister's spoken out in the Commons.
Then he wants to link into Maggie saying the acid test is whether those who profess revulsion
Well,
of so-and-so...
you must be very careful not to link those directly, because the acid test reply is an answer to Beaumont Dark, saying that you should limit the number of mourners at funerals to 50. Yeah?
Okay. Yes.
Ready when you are.
The White House seems to have decided already what these talks will yield, and that apparently is not very much. In any case, for the moment, the Russians are not Mr. Reagan's priority.
He tried and tried again to create a test tube baby, failing, and it was at that point 20 years ago. You know, that's the thought. So the man who put the first test tube baby into her died aged 74. A colleague paid tribute 12/26/34.
Well, there's any copy on the summit. What's happened there?
Then we freeze the frame.
Okay,
and
to the
that
freeze.
freeze frame becomes the backing for this graphic which says so and so and so and so.
Yeah.
That figure, any one, 40 ships hit. We then change both the title of the piece.
The Graphics Workshop. Scene of Technical Revolution number 3.
This is the picture you wanted, isn't it?
Graphics in television news show the most visible of technological changes. A marked contrast to the scene a few years ago.
On the BOAC story, now, we've got two figures here. We want to compare one with the other. I wonder if perhaps an animation or a superimposition will do for that.
Yes, well, if we use this as a background and something similar to this, as a superimposition with your block of figures, and animate the second row.
Cardboard and celluloid for maps and charts. Signwriter's freehand in the design. And an embossing machine to print the type for captions. The graphics area looked like a decorator's paint shop. Now the paint pots have disappeared. With today's equipment, the graphic designer can mix his colors on an electronic palette using a stylus. Having perfected his orange, he transfers it to the map he's preparing for the 6 o'clock news. Everything he needs is available from the menu which comes up on his monitor. The digital paint box has replaced brushes and paints. Another color for Iraq? Purple, selected with the cursor, is one of 35 colours offered directly from the palette. It's already mixed. The electronic paint box encourages experiment. If names or designs are the wrong colour or in the wrong place, simply change them. A major advantage of digital graphics is that the designer does not need to know anything about electronics or computers. Using stylus instead of paintbrush and screen instead of canvas, he can remain creative in the traditional way. In fact, his imaginative scope has been increased by the electronics. The new graphics have given a stylishness to the way every design and every map appears on the screen. Very soon, all this will be in 3D and all within news deadlines. The graphics revolution is still unfolding.
I think that shot is too long. Make that 4 seconds. That one I'm a bit worried about, actually. I wouldn't come in on it, I'd go to the others. And come into that third shot later on so that you then move along the road. And come into that about there rather than the earlier pan across the bodies, okay? Try that, Simon. If it means shortening it, you'll have to shorten it. I can't put that out at 6 o'clock. Okay, bye-bye.
It says here he's 30. No, I was with a 34-year-old Protestant. But he's also 32 and he's also 33, that's the problem.
Ah, I'll check that for you.
Well,
Can you call me straight back on 7776?
Yeah. Who is that, Simon?
That's picture editor. They've been told at their end they can't use moving pictures.
Okay. Where is Jeff? Is he in the cutting room?
Yeah.
If you wouldn't mind, I mean, it's a question of the statement. Was it a defence statement? Was it a prosecution statement?
Are you ready, Linda?
More or less, yes. The talks have now been underway for just over 3 hours. P&O say there is room for manoeuvre over the crucial question of rostering, but they'd still need to find other ways of achieving the savings they say they need. The lifting of tomorrow's deadlines for the acceptance of the new contracts, they say, will give the union a breathing space. But with the full weight of the law being held in reserve, that breathing space is very limited. Right, that's better. By lifting the deadlines for acceptance of the new contracts, they say they've given the union a breathing space. But with the full weight of the law being held very much in first reserve, that breathing space is limited.
Services Desk. The Director General has issued a statement detailing the Corporation's policy on untransmitted material in relation to Saturday's Belfast killings. Copies will be on printers shortly.
Obviously, I'm going to have to run this reply from the BBC about the Ulster tapes, and it'll mean the lead story is going to be very much longer. And our report from Belfast is going to be very late anyway.
The stakes have been raised considerably since the two sides last met at ACAS a week ago. The NUS leader Sam McCluskey outwardly...
All right?
Yeah, pull the track up there.
who's in page 7, please? Somebody's in my page 7. Urgent. Thank you, I got it. Somebody's come out.
North 85.
Is it you?
Kevin
You're going to mention history
McCollin,
of the
M small c,
No.
P-O-1-L-I-N for nuts.
Okay, come out.
Russians are not Mr. Reagan's priority. He was asked this morning what he was doing on Capitol Hill.
Okay, stand by while I go ahead.
He wasn't laughing later. He was pushing his campaign to aid the Contra rebels in Nicaragua. That's a battle with Congress more immediate than any battle with Moscow.
Okay, sir, could you get up to speed, please, and we'll start feeding in about 30 seconds? They're up to speed anytime you're ready.
The Russians have come with all the high expectations. The Americans are playing them down. Foreign Minister Shevardnadze at the State Department this morning, genial, affable, and at least as concerned with appearance as substance. He was asked this morning what he was doing on Capitol Hill.
Yes, I heard that. I'm just trying to think of the answer.
He wasn't laughing later. He was pushing his campaign to aid the Contra rebels in Nicaragua. That's a battle with Congress more immediate than any battle with Moscow. In any case, for the moment, the Russians are not Mr. Reagan's priority. This is Tim Sebastian for the 6 o'clock news in Washington.
We made it.
Right. Before we get to the Bennett and the politics. Cheers. If that is ready, then ready. We are covered in the intro.
All right. Well, yes, we should have Bennett's.
They have got the best part of 20 minutes to get that sorted out. I'll be all right.
All right. I'm on.
All right, I'll see you shortly.
It's just a still of stone. And stone from 112 for a little while.
So to the end or not?
Yeah, you better.
Thanks. Hello, Mark.
Neil Bennett's piece is coming into BT12 now.
It's cutting it fine, isn't it? Dick Newperson.
Is this still coming in?
They're taking Ulster now. It should be all right, but
Okay, run it into TX, won't you?
Yes.
Or play it from 12, I don't know.
The police officer said that when he'd cautioned Stone at 4:10 this afternoon, he replied, "I alone carried out this military operation as a retaliatory strike against Provisional Sinn Féin and the IRA in response to the slaughter of innocents."
You read into BBC.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're confident of having page 13, are we, the political spot?
David Fair.
Stand by TX with your titles, please. Thank you very much.
You will tell me, will you?
And stand by TX with your 2 headlines.
Run 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Nicholas Witchell.
2, 1, 0.
Good evening, the headlines at 6 o'clock. A man has appeared in court in Belfast charged with murdering 3 people in the gun and grenade attack on an IRA funeral last week, and with 3 other murders. Mrs. Thatcher has said everyone, including the news media, has a bounden duty to help bring terrorists to justice. Also tonight, the Gulf War, the Royal Navy have rescued the crew of a Norwegian tanker attacked by the Iranians. And on land, the victims of what the Iranians say was a chemical attack by the Iraqis.
It's not in the headlines.
No, well, I wouldn't expect it to be because there's not a conclusion to it yet.
So I'm still 5 minutes over, right? Okay, give me a series of things we can drop.
Michael Stone was brought into court flanked by armed police officers. He had 2 black eyes.
An IUC detective told the court that he pretended...
Would you mind all that? I know they hate you turning that knob.
Anyway, John, we got Thomas
a bit left on this.
But they... The police officer said that when he cautioned Stone at 4:10 this afternoon, he replied, I read his file, he was a legitimate target.
The Prime Minister has told the House of Commons that everyone, including the news media, has a bounden duty to do everything possible to bring to justice the people who murdered 2 soldiers in West Belfast on Saturday.
Cut, go tape.
There's 56 seconds on tape.
Okay, we change halfway through to Compass Thatcher. We don't have the rewrite of 18 yet.
I should bring them from the front. Karen, it's probably easier to...
What's the overrun, Michelle?
Before the talks at ECAS got underway, the P&O Group tried its annual pre-tax profit. They were up by £100 million on last year.
It's being emphasised, sink or swim with the rest.
They can't say business is going but made less than 10% return on the money.
Q12 coming on 13. They say they've given the union a breathing space, but with the full weight of the law being held very much in first reserve, that breathing space is limited.
For years, Dover's ferries made big money, and the good workmen were part of it. Now that's all threatened.
Competition's become cutthroat, and worst of all...
It's working in quite well with Linda's piece, actually, isn't it?
Yeah. So P&O has told its employees that their working agreements will have to be torn up. Some crewmen work only 90 days a year, though they say that figure is deceptive.
Is there a very strong warning on the gas thing? Can you get me the intro?
Medical assistance.
Oh, Christ, I mean, it's a priority. Nick, I hope there's a very strong warning on the next intro. Okay, good.
We have received these pictures from Halabja. They are disturbing and they show the victims of the attack and may distress some viewers.
These are some of the 5,000 people who Iran say have been killed by Iraqi gas attacks in and near the town of Halabja.
Okay, mate, thanks. Right, so we'll drop the summit. What page is that?
58, 59.
What does that do to the running order? Does it feel right?
You go from crime to celebrity.
No, it's not right. And then to punishment. It's not right at all. Okay.
We'll lose Hollins for us, because we can't telescope the other. Thanks.
We drop page 80. Hollins is gone.
No, we do better.
That'll do it, yes.
Mrs. Thatcher rolled up her sleeves today for a spot of spring cleaning. She went to St James's Park in London to launch a new campaign to make Britain tidier. One corner of the park was deliberately turned into an eyesore for the occasion, and the professionals were on hand. Mrs. Thatcher didn't need any special tuition. Her two-pronged attack swept all before her.
Where's the two-pronged?
And that was the 6 o'clock news on Tuesday, the 22nd of March. The Prime Minister said mere expressions of sympathy and condemnation of the violence in Northern Ireland were not enough. It is what people do which tells us whether they're really determined to root out terrorism, she said.
And Patrick Steptoe, the man who brought the first test tube baby into the world, died.
This is the last one. We're dropping the last one.
The distress of infertility.
Drop the last one.
And devoted his life to helping women.
That's it from us. Martin Lewis and Philip Hayton will be here at 9 o'clock. From us, good night.
Well, there we are.
It's like a song.
It was, yes, unusual.
Bang on. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks, Simon.
I did like it. As you know, I'm a great fan of the album, but it just...
The 6 o'clock news over. When the day started, had they expected all that last-minute hassle?
There was a lot of last-minute hassle with the lead story. The report from Belfast on the appearance of a man in court charged with 3 murders was very late, and at one stage was threatened to become an inject, which means it was to be fed live from Belfast rather than received here first. And after that came the Commons report on the BBC and its refusal to hand over the film. And after that, a report by a media correspondent on why the BBC and ITN chose not to allow the RUC to have the untransmitted film. I looked at the report, I decided the balance of it was wrong, and so I dropped it in favour of a clear, straight, simple reply from the BBC as to why it wasn't allowing the film to go to the RUC.
Why did you drop the Shevardnadze short story from Washington?
A question of time. The programme was meant to be 32 minutes or so. By the time I went into the gallery, it had grown by a few minutes, and it was a question of dropping a number of stories to get out on time. Each program has to get out at exactly the right time. And in my view, there had been no great development in Washington, and so I dropped it in favor of some other material which I thought the viewer might be more interested in.
And later they decide the remaining satellite booking from Washington isn't needed either.
Hello, it's Jeff in News. The Washington at 2050, could you cancel it, please? OK, thanks.
So why was the satellite cancelled?
I think the short answer was it was a terrible story. The more serious answer is that it was a heavy news day in London, and it's one of those days where your story has to fight to get into the bulletin. There's a lot of other material around. I think it highlights one important thing about Washington. We tend to do a lot of stories because we can do them, because the technology is there to do it. It's not always necessary. Today it wasn't necessary. This was a peripheral story, but we did it because the feeds come in, the technology is there, it's easy to do, it's easy to get a satellite. In fact, it wasn't worthwhile today, but there are plenty of days when it is, plenty of days when the technology wins through. It didn't today.
In television news, the technology has indeed been winning through. And the triple revolution has been much in evidence during Tuesday, March the 22nd. Electronic graphics illustrated the Gulf tanker rescue story and the Iranian chemical warfare horror, as well as the P&O Ferries story. Only electronics made such speedy and stylish graphics possible. The electronic newsroom system eased the late arrival of the Steptoe story. In the old days, this would probably not have made the early news, certainly not in such a polished form. Electronic news gathering fed the news from Dover, from ACAS, and from Washington with amazing speed. And it's the news gathering revolution that has most affected the content of the news itself. Foreign news has become synonymous with satellites. News pictures can be beamed from virtually any corner of the globe live into people's homes. Satellites and electronic news gathering are powerful tools, but instant access to news has brought its own problems. The old idea of the deadline has disappeared. Now the only deadline is the end of the program. Editors have less time to make decisions, and often they can't see stories before they're transmitted. There is an insatiable appetite for news on television. If we really want non-stop news programs, the technology is already there to provide it.
Good evening. Michael Anthony Stone, a 32-year-old unemployed builder, appeared in a Belfast magistrates' court this afternoon.
The Stone was brought the 2 miles from hospital to Belfast Magistrates' Court.
To stick to principles which had guided them in the past. But Conservative MPs and Unionists too pressed home their case tonight. More than 70 MPs signed a Commons motion expressing disbelief.
Thank you, Martin. Talks at ACAS to try to end the Dover ferry strike were adjourned tonight after 4 hours.
Stand by there, please, TX, with 45 ferries fixed and also 46 ferry strike.
They're not Luddites, and we recognise that there's got to be change.
So, next is 55 and 56, Gulf ships. Camera too close.
The Prime Minister has said everyone, including the news media, has a bounden duty to bring terrorists to justice.
£1 million. He said he was disappointed because there'd been no proposals from the company. And that's the 9 o'clock news tonight. Good night.
Thanks very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you for doing it.
Off air.